Guys, great to get together with you today. Aki,
Nice to be
Dominic,
with you.
Nuran,
Thank you.
always a pleasure.
Thanks,
Always
Pat.
a treat to spend time with you guys, chat about a variety of different things, and
Here we are in this wonderful ROMEO headquarters.
Romeo headquarters.
ROMEO headquarters.
No Juliet.
That Pat has a lot to do with, right?
Oh, maybe a little bit. A little bit.
Everything.
So guys, lots of talk these days about individuals lacking the resources to live the lives that they would ideally like to, where we've reached a stage in our lives where it's all about retirement. And so I thought it'd
Hallelujah.
be interesting to talk with you guys about retirement and get your perspectives on how do you prepare for retirement? How do you plan for it? At what age should you start planning for retirement? What are the parameters that you should be thinking about to make sure that you can enjoy the same quality of life in your later years as you do throughout most of your adult life? So I don't know, any one of you guys want to kick it off and share your thoughts?
Well, I think first of all, there's going to be couple of retired people real soon around this table. So congratulations for your pending retirement, which is just around the corner for the two of you. So
Yeah.
congratulations. Pat and I decided a little earlier that we had enough of the rat race. So there's a lot of things to think about, right? Retirement is about your potential for your health. What are the things you want to do? Financial capacity to do the things you do want to do. Family implications. Do you have parents who are still alive? Kids, dependents. There's so many things to think about, and I think we've all done a lot of soul searching and thinking for ourselves to figure out what works for us. And I think we should maybe kind of delve into some of these things. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, good points. One of the things that jumps to mind as I listen to you is, at what stage of your life should you start asking yourself these questions and planning? Because in my experience, which granted is limited, I see a lot of people in our age bracket who hadn't thought about it early enough and find themselves now in a real pickle.
Yeah.
I also find in conversations with young people that many of them have an attitude of, problem for future me. In other words, I don't want to have to worry about these issues today.
Yeah.
I already have enough anxiety inducing experiences at this stage of my life. I don't want to have to worry about when I'm old, what I might need, what if I get sick, my parents, and so on and so forth. So maybe we start with that. At what age do you think it's appropriate to start planning for your later years?
Well, being a finance guy, we always look many years ahead in everything that we do. You can't look 1 or 2 or 3. We're always looking 25, 50 years.
So Dominic, at
Yeah.
what age did you start thinking about your needs for retirement and
My whole thing's changed the minute I had my first child. That's what it was. About everything. Because then that's when you realize you're not alone anymore. Yeah, you're with your wife, you're still alone. But then that's when I started,
so was your trigger
yeah,
in having your first child, I'm going to need to provide for this child?
or provide for this child, provide for myself so they don't have to provide for me.
Okay.
So you're supposed to be the parent. I know one day they become the parent.
So,
So to me was make sure that I'm not a financial burden to them.
So that was the trigger for you.
Yeah.
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 So to answer your question, Pat, I'm trying to remember. So when we were starting, like all of us more or less were the same generation. So I guess late 80s, early 90s, we were starting our careers, our professional journeys, right? And those were difficult times. And there was a lot of uncertainty. I mean, the economy wasn't doing well. And I remember thinking, how am I going to do this? The country could be bankrupt. I mean, we were dealing with very high government deficits. And I had a lot of concern. I remember, so I'm starting my career, and I might not have gainful employment over a long period of time. Especially for somebody who is, who is in the non-business, sector. I was like a graduate in political science. I wanted to do community work, nonprofit work, and it was the choices were not very obvious. So I was taking a step back, and I was really worried about how this was going to play out. What kind of economic means I would be able to secure, and then at some point, if I get sick or if I want to retire, how's that all going to work? So I really started to worry about this right at the outset, because it was a completely different environment, and there was a lot of reason to be worried about the future. But I try to always look long term and try to figure things out, so I know where I'm going. The registered retirement savings plan whole regime, I'm not sure when was that in place.
It would have.
Oh, long before.
Long before
we entered the
Okay.
workforce.
Yeah.
Okay, but that was
It's a 401k equivalent, right?
right. That's right. So I remember. I mean, and I knew about that. So I said that here's one tool that I should be looking at. So it was always like a part of my thinking as I was starting out.
So let me ask a question though. So we're all asking individually, but we were all in couples by that time. Did your spouse have the same mindset or frame of mind of looking forward? Because I know for me specifically, maybe that wasn't the case for mine. So were you guys aligned right away to say, hey, I'm in my 20s, I'm going to think about retirement? Or was it, just you that was thinking about it? So how does that dynamic?
Well, what
So,
about that? What about that?
Well, for myself, I would say I started thinking about the various stages of my life, including the stage at which I would no longer be working to earn an income, long before I was in a long-term relationship.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So for me, I would say it started probably in my late teens, early 20s.
Wow, that early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I started working, I would say full time, of course, I was 22 years old. I had just graduated. I immediately started putting money aside. So I set up a financial structure for myself whereby I would put so much money, a certain percentage of my income aside for the future, a certain percentage, of course, towards supporting myself in the here and now, and a certain percentage which I viewed as more discretionary to, enjoy life at various stages.
That's very good.
So that's how it really started for me. So by the time I got into a relationship and eventually got married, I had significant savings put aside. Now, in answer to your question, what was the mindset? I would say most of the people, whether it was my better half or other people in my age group, I found myself to be somewhat exceptional in that regard. And I don't mean exceptional as in I'm wonderful. I mean in terms of most people weren't thinking the way I was thinking. They were living in the here and now. They were making ends meet. They were enjoying life. They weren't really thinking about their futures.
The other factor I would say is, and this I think would apply to all of us, is as the kids of immigrants. I mean, we in our culture really appreciated being prudent and being financially responsible. I mean, our families didn't have much, but they imbued in us, this reflection to make sure that financially you're responsible and you're able to support yourself and you're able to support your family. So that was always, very much a key part of our upbringing, and that carried over for us. So in our case, both Diane and I, my wife, obviously, being the kids of people who lived that way and who saw money that way, well, certainly we adopted that.
And to take your point further, for myself, I knew I wouldn't be getting any significant inheritance from my parents. So I knew that there was no backup plan. It had to be my plan. And on my wife's side, same situation. So we need to answer your question, Nora, she was even more disciplined than I was.
Okay, because that's helpful in a relationship as well. I mean, we're talking about retirement, not relationships, but they are kind of intertwined.
Of course.
With the person you're choosing to live with. I know for myself, I was thinking in my 30s, looking forward, making sure the 401k RSP thing was maximized. Always thinking about how we could save a certain amount. To your point, Pat, about putting money aside for the future, but balancing that with the demands of the current demands and the demands of a spouse who wanted certain things as well, and kind of managing all of that all at once.
Yeah, so I think one of the factors that has
stressful.
probably always worked against that and perhaps more so today than ever before, is this basic notion of living within your means.
Yeah,
Because people who don't live within their means are incapable of setting money aside for the future.
of course. Yeah.
And if anything, today I would say we live in a society where people are living, for the most part, well above their means. Right? It's life as a surface. People are borrowing from whatever sources they can access in order to ensure that they're enjoying as high a standard of living today.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that sets them up for a less than stellar retirement.
Well, it's a social media trap, right? Show your best life, get all your experiences in. Oh, look on Instagram, on Facebook, on whatever. My friends are doing this. I saw him in Bali. This one's driving this, and it's like, yeah, but you're seeing snippets of the best part of that person's life. You're not seeing them, crying over a tub of ice cream, 12 o'clock at night for whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and I think what was really negative is that this combination of like free money, right? I mean, low interest rates for the longest time.
Yeah.
So you can basically max out your credit cards and and financial illiteracy. So these two ingredients really make for people just not being responsible. And
So who pays the bill for this? So what happens to people who don't have money for retirement? They just have, government social security, a pension, whatever you want to call it. So,
Well, they're a burden on society.
okay, so what do we do?
So
Well, what we say, what do we do? I think that there's a reason we're seeing some of the ideological trends we're seeing nowadays, right? So I'm at times surprised, at times not, by the number of people I talk to who seem to be leaning more and more towards, I hate to use the term socialism, but a more socialist type of mentality, right? So it's a liberalism pushed to an extreme where there's this strong sense of entitlement that is somewhat pervasive today throughout society. And with that sense of entitlement comes this notion that I should be cared for, I should be provided for financially and otherwise. And so, tax the rich to a greater extent in order to better support individuals who don't have the financial means. And as we see the middle class erode increasingly, right, I think there's greater and greater disparity between the haves and the have-nots.
Definitely.
And I don't see this ending well. And one of the big issues, which I suggest we tackle in a future podcast, is government's inability to manage our money, because government is managing tax dollars, which is our money, very inefficiently. And they're setting a very poor example for the rest of society.
Right. Except one important counter argument to what you just stated is that if you look at the Canadian pension plan, it is well managed. It's independent of government.
Thank God.
The politicians really don't have much say, and by all accounts, by auditors, it's recognized as being like a well managed fund.
Fair enough, but whether we talk about Canada or another country, regardless of how well pension plans are managed,
Right.
the proceeds from their pension plans are insufficient for most people
Exactly.
to support themselves adequately, or at the very least to maintain a standard of living which they view as desirable in their retirement years.
Well, this is where financial literacy comes in, and that's a huge problem.
what are the three mistakes for retirement that people make? They start too late to start saving up. They underestimate how much they need, and they underestimate their expenses. A few months ago, I was talking to a guy. He says, all I need is about $50,000 a year. Yeah, sure. What are you going to do with $50,000 a year?
Yeah, but Dom, it depends on people's lifestyle.
Yeah, but if you're sitting in your sofa,
But Don, I think that the point you're making supports Aki's earlier comment about financial literacy,
yeah,
right? So because even if someone convinces themselves that X amount of dollars, whether it's 50, 60, 40, I don't know, is sufficient, they're not taking into account inflation. They're highly likely not to be considering extreme circumstances where they may get seriously ill.
yeah.
Contingencies.
And what do you draw from, right?
Exactly.
I mean, there's a situation that I'm well acquainted with currently,
Exactly.
where a member of my family is not able to support themselves anymore. for health reasons, not for financial reasons, but thankfully has the financial resources to continue living her life as she desires. But it's extremely expensive, right? I mean, it's
I can only imagine.
well into the six figures,
Oh.
right? If you don't have the financial resources, you don't have options.
No.
Right. And it's interesting that we're focused on the financial aspect of retirement, which of course is of paramount importance. But there are other elements, as those of us who are in that stage today realize, you know, maintaining your health, both physical and mental, you know, and what do you do to prepare for that?
Yeah. And let me just say, so I think Dominic, you're going to be doing this before me, but both of us in the next month, we're going to be doing this. We're going to be taking that big step. Hallelujah. And
Welcome to the club.
Right. And I just want to say that I'm not approaching this. I have no illusions that this is, you know, a magic bullet, that this is going to be paradise and all my problems are going to be solved and I'm not going to have any stress and completely, you know, not have to deal with a rat race. No. You know, I realize that I could be setting myself up for disappointment. If you do have that idealistic notion, then forget it. You are going to be disappointed. So I just, like everything else in your life, right? You have to make sure that there's meaning in what you're doing, that you're going to be engaged in some form. You still have to be like functioning, you know, on all cylinders. It's different. The pace is different. I mean, that's the advantage of it. I mean, this is the way I see it. I'm not going to be on the clock. I'm not going to be, you know, up against, you know, other people's priorities and expectations. That's what's different. And that's significant. But as a person, I still have to, you know, I have to have my projects. I still have to be active. I still have to be sharp mentally. So it's not about just, you know, sitting on the couch and you know, people think that I'm just going to, you know, always be in a recreational mode and that's the way it's going to go. It's not the way it's going to go, and that's not a healthy attitude to have, I don't think.
So how do you prepare for that?
Well, I'll tell you my case. It's easy. Being a CPA, it's a profession. So I can help out. I can sit at home doing accounting for a church. So for me, that's my way out.
Yeah, and for me, like if I may, you know, I'm the missionary here, right? I'm the only one here for the nonprofit world.
Yeah.
So volunteering. I mean, that's you know that's been, you know, my career has been based around working with people, volunteering, you know, for the common good. I'm sure we're going to have interesting reactions to this in a few minutes, but. So what that means for me is exactly taking it now to another level. I'd love, you know, for example, just to give a very concrete example, the organization that I'm the head of right now, we do an annual fundraiser, which all of you guys support, and I thank you for that. And my God, I mean, when you're doing it as the executive director, there is so much responsibility. I want to continue to support that event, but I don't want to be executive director anymore. I look forward to it, next year's event where I can go there with you guys and actually sit there and enjoy the event and have a good conversation and just, you know, really enjoy the event. So that's an example of how I see retirement. It's really still doing the things that you're good at, but doing it at your own pace, at a more relaxed pace, and with less pressure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Your thoughts, Aaron?
Yeah, so I've been, let's see, since April 22, I've been not doing anything.
Well, don't tell us you haven't been doing anything.
Well,
You haven't been working for a living.
I haven't been working for a living, but I've also, a couple of things about what you said. First of all, being on your own schedule is a wonderful thing. Not having to do anything, but wanting to do something is a wonderful feeling. I don't feel any stress about anything. Well, not about anything. Let's say, you know, there's always family stress and other little things, but these are little smaller things. But no real stress about delivering whatever I had to for work and all of this other stuff. So being on your own schedule is a fantastic thing.
And not having to manage people and staff.
Absolutely. Having to deal with individuals and all this other stuff. Yeah, putting all that aside, that's fantastic. For me, I found that you go through cycles. There are some cycles where you're busied out by projects, by things that you want to do, by travel, by whatever, and then there's the lulls, if you will, and you need to kind of, you know, because I live alone. I don't have a spouse at this point, so for me, I've had to manage the downtimes, and the downtimes you have to be good with being on your own and by yourself, and being okay in that solitude, if you will, because there's going to be times, and it depends. It could be a week, it could be a month, whatever that time is. You need to be able to be okay with yourself and being able to just be. You don't have to. You don't need to crave someone's company. You don't need to. You don't get depressed because, oh my God, I have nothing to do. No, you find a few things that you like, whether it's content on TV or on the web. Going to the gym, working out, going for a drive, going to visit people, whatever it is, you find those things, and that occupies your time. And the beauty of it is it doesn't stress you if you don't have any stressors that are coming in. And I find, I don't know, just from a lifestyle perspective, it's just more relaxing.
Yeah, I think what's interesting though in listening to you is that as individuals, we all have different levels of being either extroverted, introverted,
Exactly.
craving social interaction or not.
Exactly.
So that to me is very much dependent on your personality, your character, your traits. On the other hand, I think regardless of what your personality traits are, or your character is, you have to have a sense of purpose in life. And so for many of us, during our working years, a lot of that sense of purpose comes from our careers, our professions, our work. When that's no longer there, how do you ensure that you continue having a sense of purpose? And to me, it can't be happenstance. It's not something that you want to just, I'll deal with it when I choose to leave the workforce.
Can you define what you consider a sense of purpose?
Volunteering for me.
No,
Well,
that's
volunteering is an activity.
It's an activity.
exactly.
No, but that gives me purpose though.
No, but what is that sense of purpose? What is that thing so you desire a thing?
It's
that's
not so
gonna-
much desiring a thing. It's giving you a sense of you're making a meaningful contribution that is giving you a sense of satisfaction, gratification, well-being.
Why?
Maybe-
Why do you need that?
Maybe we could say it this way: it's going to bed at night and saying, "Yeah, it was worth living today."
Why? Why does that even come into your brain? Why does
It
that
does
thought?
to me. It does to me.
Okay, but don't
Because
you?
I find that foreign as a thought.
Really?
Really?
Yeah, I don't understand why I need a sense of purpose. I'm a being. I am here. I don't need a sense of, I deserve to be alive today.
So
No, not deserving. To me, deserving
No.
comes back to entitlements. I don't believe in entitlement.
no, but that leads to depression is the way I look at it. If
on
you
the,
don't
con-
find,
on the contrary, I think that many people, at least in my experience, many people, and frankly, it could be at any stage of life, who don't have a purpose, or when I say don't have a purpose, don't see in themselves a purpose, tend to get depressed, tend to suffer
That's what I'm
from
trying to say.
anxiety. No, those who don't have.
yeah, I know, but that's why I tried to define what it is, because the way you're expressing it is if you don't have it, you're going to get depressed, or you're not going to feel good.
I don't know that you will or you won't.
Right.
I think that, again, I can only base my comments on my life experience, and not just my personal life experience, but people I've encountered. And by and large, those people who are in the healthiest state are individuals who have that sense of purpose.
right. So Nuran, I mean, the way I measure it is, I want my day, to be to have something, right? I want to be able to. I don't want to just sit and be passive. That's the simplest way I can put it. So purpose
that's
is purpose is about in the course of your day, doing things, not just being passive and sitting still.
Right. So you can choose to have a day off where you don't do anything
Yeah.
because you don't feel like it.
Of
Of course.
And does that now mean that
No.
day you didn't have a sense of purpose
No.
because you decided to
No.
be lazy?
So this is purpose right here. What we're doing right now.
Well, so the way I look at it, for myself, just personally, my mandate to myself is to stay in shape. I'd like to be active, and I want to stay in shape. You may call that a purpose. I don't call that a purpose to me.
Interesting.
It's not a higher level purpose that I live towards, that I have to be in shape. No, but it's something that drives me, that I like. I like to push myself. I could see the decline in my older years of stuff I used to be able to do. Now I can't do as well as I used to, and all of that stuff. But that's just life.
But do you do it with the idea that there's going to be an outcome that you're trying to achieve? or are likely to achieve by engaging in those activities?
Yeah, what I do is I hold myself to an unrealistic ideal, and I try to achieve an unrealistic ideal, which I will never achieve. But in my brain, I always continue to say,
So
I'm
to
going
me,
to try
to
and
me,
achieve
that's
it.
purpose.
Exactly, I agree.
Right?
So
In the
that's
same,
why,
in the
that's why I
same
asked you
way,
to define it, right?
in the same way as a parent
Mm-hmm.
who chooses, a parent of a young child who chooses to put other elements of their life on hold for the purpose of being the best possible parent they can to their newborn child, is doing so with a sense of purpose.
Okay.
The individual who enjoys their work and day after day after day carries out their various tasks and responsibilities is doing so with a sense of purpose. The individual who goes to work not because they enjoy it, but because they have to generate sufficient funds to support themselves, is doing so with a different sense of purpose, but still with a sense of purpose.
Look, Niran, take stock. Take stock of what is purpose in our lives, right? And we live it. I know that, right? So we have parents, some of us we were still committed to, that we can now give back more than we were able to maybe when we were working, when we were busier. That is a significant piece of purpose. Absolutely about taking care of yourself mentally and physically. So how many people actually follow through? I mean, people that start with their gym memberships in January and by the end of February, they're gone, they disappeared. So, being there and sticking to it, that's purpose. That doesn't have to be like anything, in the stratosphere, like, very, United Nations award level stuff here. We're talking about, just, making good use of the time that we have and the opportunities that we have. And it's not.
I get it. I kind of understand where you guys are going with this. Things like for me, my kids, supporting the kids, helping them, with whatever they need, and so on. So yeah, I could see that as a so-called sense of purpose. But for me, it's, how can I say it? It's like, as a human being, you have to be self-aware, but also self-driven. And if you can't find something inside to drive you, so you said about going to sleep and feeling that day was a good day. I'll flip it around. I'll say, when you wake up in the morning, you should have a path. You should have, whether you're not going to do anything that day or whether you're going to go and do 20 things, you should be driven to say, hey, I'm alive. I'm going to do this stuff. Otherwise, you're going to spiral into...
My life is one checklist after another.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're touching on things that are part of your wiring.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact of the matter is that there are people who have that drive, internal drive. There are individuals who don't. My point is that regardless of whether you do or you don't.
Aren't they tied together, though?
How so?
If you don't have that internal drive, how are you going to fuel that sense of purpose?
Well, just because you don't have the same level of internal drive as another human being doesn't mean that you can't learn along the way how to structure your life in a way that is going to be meaningful, that is going to provide you a sense of purpose. So in the same way as too many people today, unfortunately, do not have financial literacy. And why don't they? Because they were never taught, whether it was by their parents teaching them or being in an academic environment where they learned, or surrounded by friends and colleagues that were able to bring that knowledge to them and that skill to them.
Or independently wealthy, they have the advantage of the good luck.
Just because you're independently wealthy doesn't mean that you're financially literate.
Okay, but I just want to give you the example. How many examples we know of successful family businesses that they get passed on to the next generation, and that generation basically liquidates the business or the business fails, because at some point that generation that inherited the strong business was never properly trained and was never mature enough to be able to continue the successful business. There's a lot of that. So that's what I'm saying.
Fundamentally lacking the skills.
Yeah, lacking the skills and the mentoring. They never got the mentoring.
Well, but the mentoring. So what is the purpose of mentoring? So again, I think that, and again, maybe a topic for a different podcast, but I think the knowledge you acquire, the skills you develop, the effort you apply in life combined is what's going to drive the results, right?
Right.
The outcomes.
But I just want to say, doesn't matter. I think, Niran, I want to reassure you, you have purpose. we by our actions, this is a group of people here. I see purpose. So we can have the debate about drive versus purpose, and really pick it apart. But essentially, fundamentally, I think we're examples of people with purpose, with discipline, like really making good use of the time that we have and the opportunities that we have.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, and again, so I just want to come back to your point about internal drive. There are people who are just naturally oriented a certain way, right? So when you talk about, well, I have lists for everything.
That's an LGBTQ discussion, by the way.
Is it? Again, perhaps a topic for another
Care to
day.
elaborate?
I'll orient it in a different way. I'm sorry.
So fundamentally, I think that all individuals have the capacity to learn how to plan. Doesn't mean that they will all have this, they will excel at it or they will have the same standard of performance, but everyone has the capacity to learn how to plan and execute. And it's a combination of those two things that are going to allow you to be more or less successful in life, including retirement. So this conversation started with, at what age do you plan for retirement? How do you plan for retirement? And then, of course, how do you execute your plan
Right.
so that you're successful? And successful can be an absolute or relative measure
Definitely.
at various stages of life.
And another mistake that is made often is people save too much for retirement. Let me explain. The people save all this money, they retire, and then they sit in a sofa and they do nothing. And it comes back to the sense of purpose.
And the government gets their money back.
It's all like,
Well, perhaps not.
No,
So,
perhaps not,
but
yeah.
to me, those are not that closely intertwined, because at the end of the day, I could care less how you choose to spend your time. I may have an opinion. Chances are I do, right? But it's your life. Do with it as you will. Having savings or financial resources gives you the option of choosing what you want to do.
Good point.
If you don't have the resources, you have very limited choices, right?
It's still an issue.
Imagine the person who's sitting on the couch because they have no choice but to sit on the couch,
You're right.
as opposed to the person who chooses to do so because, you know what, that day, that week, that year, that's what they choose to do. Two different scenarios.
A lot less stressful with the second one.
And how?
Well, it's the old.
And how?
Yeah, and unfortunately, right? I mean, the reality in our society is that the majority of people don't have the resources when they're retired.
Yeah.
The majority of people are really just dependent on their government pensions.
Oh, it's the old saying, being young and having no money is okay. Being old and having no money, that's tough.
And that's, I think, where we're at as a society.
So that's what you need to avoid.
Okay, so let's flip this around a little bit. It's getting a little bit depressing here.
Depressing.
Yeah. So so part of retirement for me and the finances around retirement is also thinking about, we all have kids.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that I start thinking about, okay, well, how much should I spend in my retirement, putting in mind that I have kids and I want to, I do want to leave something for them when I'm not around anymore. So how much do I spend on a OPEX or operating, basically monthly perspective? Should I think about buying something like, another house, a summer house or whatever, where I'm going to spend, a larger sum of money and sink it someplace? These financial decisions for me right now, and I'm, relatively young in my retirement, I'm thinking about these things now with the view of what do my choices mean for my kids when I'm not around anymore. And I have that mindset. Do you guys feel the same way?
So it's interesting. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think that what you're describing is largely driven by your value system,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And I would say I look at our family and my kids today probably have some of the same values as Lisa and I do, but they also have very different beliefs in a number of different areas. I always come back to, my own life and reflecting on what my parents instilled in my brother and I, what our expectations were along the way, what the expectations are today. So I think the best thing my parents ever did was instill some really healthy values in us. So I think, and I base myself on the life I've led. Not perfect by any means, but I always come back to my values, my belief system, and I think that I've done more good than bad, and the things that really matter most to me are the things that I've been true to, I've been committed to. Nowhere and at no stage in my life that I have an expectation of my parents providing for me financially. My parents were terrific. So the deal was, as long as we chose to remain in school, and they had the means, but as long as we chose to remain in school, everything would be provided for. If we felt that that was insufficient to do some of the things that we wanted to do or acquire some of the things we wanted to acquire, then go out and get a job, part-time job, right? And make yourself some extra money and apply it towards enjoying the quality of life that you want. But from the moment I entered the workforce,
That's it.
I supported myself. I cared for myself. And so by the same token, before I got married and before I had kids, I knew that I wanted to get married and have kids. And so when I talked earlier about starting to plan for retirement in my late teens, early 20s, I was already thinking then about, I'm going to have a family. And one of the responsibilities, if I choose to have a family, is providing for them. For me, that meant, similar to my parents, ensuring that as long as my kids remain in school, I'm going to provide for them. I don't want to have to worry about anything but focusing on their studies. And that at some point they would transition into adulthood. And if I chose to assist them financially or otherwise in order to help them enjoy a higher quality of life, great.
Yeah.
It's my choice.
Completely agree with what you just said, Pat.
And if I choose not to, they have themselves to rely
So
on.
I don't know about you guys, but when I hear people saying, and it happens, and we know this is like a common thread that people are, they tell you, I have my career, I built my life, I've been a good parent, but my kids now, I've given them what they need in order for them to go ahead and accumulate their wealth and build their lives, and that's up to them. I've done my part. I'm going to enjoy my wealth. I'm going to spend it so that I can have the good life that I want, and my kids are off on their own. And I think what you're saying, Pat, and I'm with you, is that's not in our culture. Our culture is, and to this day, I mean, we think about what we're going to bequeath to the kids. What, our kids were very fortunate. Both of them are professional. They're doing very well career-wise, but we still feel that we have a responsibility. So when we retire, it's not about just us having the good life and then that's it, and just thinking about, our well-being and our happiness. It's also about the idea of family that's always been imbued in us, starting, from our parents.
Now, but by the same token, so I would say today, and my kids may feel differently, I don't believe that they're entitled to anything. I believe that they should apply themselves to live the life that they envision for themselves. And they have the capacity, meaning that they have the potential to do so. I would probably talk very differently if I had children who didn't have the potential. But like most people today, they would tell you, oh, that's a nice car, that's a nice home, that's a nice whatever, or I'd like to take this trip. Then plan accordingly. Don't expect that I'm going to fork out, right? And if I choose to, it's my prerogative. But don't expect it. And we don't know what the future holds for. So, I talked earlier about an unfortunate situation involving the poor health of a family member. Any one of us could, and hopefully it won't happen, but any one of us can get seriously ill. Our spouses, our better halves can get seriously ill. And for me, then that becomes the priority, right? And having the financial resource to say, if we can't get the quality of care that we need in order to deal with a serious health issue, it's comforting to know that we have the financial resources to apply in order to get the help we need on a timely basis. And if that means that the resources that remain are diminished, or the resources that may be inherited by family members are diminished, then so be it.
Right. So, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, the way I did it is when I got married, I determined what I wanted my net equity to be when I retired. You know, present value, you know that. And I did not achieve it, I'll admit it. But now, the way I see it is, what I've given myself as an objective is what to give to each one of my two daughters and to live with the rest. And to enjoy life also. But I put a minimum, what I want to leave to both my daughters. Because even though they're doing really well, my feeling is that this world will go through our very difficult times. They'll need help.
So it's interesting. So I'm going to come back to the whole planning execution thing, right? So similar to you, you know, I spent a considerable amount of time thinking about the life I wanted to enjoy at various stages and trying to maintain an overall quality of life that allowed me not to have to stress or worry about, do I have the means, right? So I also believe, and again, at various stages of life, you should set money aside, not just for retirement, but for rainy days. You never know what's around the corner. You could get laid off work while you're working. You can develop health issues. You can encounter some difficulties that require to have resources to support yourself or sustain yourself. What I tell people today, and this has changed just because longevity is being extended, right, for medical and other reasons. Today, you should plan to live to the age of 100. If you're really fortunate, you get close and remain in relatively good health. But the likelihood is that as you age, you're going to have a growing number of health issues. And with that comes growing costs to provide the necessary health care. I say, plan financially as if you're going to live to the age of 100.
So
Look at the lifestyle you want to enjoy. Estimate today what it cost you. Factor in inflation, the cost of inflation, and you now have a good idea of how much income you need or how much money you need annually to support yourself for the next 20, 30, 40 years, depending on when you choose to retire, when you're able to retire.
Another mistake that people forget is the RSP account. We have a partner, government.
RSP, it's interesting. So,
Yeah.
you know, we RSP. So retirement funds. Retirement funds are interesting because many of them are structured in a way where when you're contributing, right, you get to deduct the contribution from your taxable income.
I want to call a timeout for a second because you changed topics into the RSP and 401k thing. I don't agree with your premise of 100-year longevity and chasing, you know, the next morning and the next day when your body doesn't work anymore, when your diapers have to be changed every day, when you're drooling on yourself. So I have a different view. I personally don't want to be a blob for the last 10 years of my life.
That's a personal choice. And,
Right.
and I would answer to that.
So the reason I'm bringing this up is because I wanted to hear from around the table, because you set a point of view of you know, living to this age and
No,
pursuing.
I'm saying you have to plan. So the point is
Well, I
that
disagree because if planning that means you want to live up to 100 years old.
I want to live as long as I can while remaining in good health.
See
No,
that?
no,
Okay.
but I don't know what the future holds in store.
Right.
What I'm saying is for financial planning purposes,
Right.
you should today, if you're planning for retirement today, and you should, plan that you're going to live until the age of 100. Whether you remain in good health or not, don't know.
Okay.
Whether you live to the age of 100 or not,
I agree.
don't know.
So I agree with
Now,
that.
depending on where you live,
Yeah.
you may have the option of assisted suicide or end of life planning. Some people live in societies where that isn't an option.
Yeah.
You're going to need the resources to support yourself because the state may not provide for that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
There are many, many unknowns. Imagine that you don't plan to live to 100,
Yep.
right? You plan to live till the age of 85 because in your mind, that's a good life. I've lived a good life. You reach the age of 85, you're in fantastic health. You've exhausted your financial resources. what do you think the rest of your life's going to look like?
No, I'm not disagreeing.
That's
with
all
that.
I'm saying.
It's the way you kind of framed it before. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I want to be in the health that I am as long as possible. But at a certain point, our bodies are going to crumble, and you don't
know when that is.
exactly. So you don't know when that is. Post 85, 88. In that, we're looking at it with someone like a Biden, who's 81 years old.
I don't look at it
He's
as a
got-
Biden. I had a maternal grandmother who lived 2 months shy of her 104th birthday. That's what I look at.
Beautiful.
Right? And until the age of 100, she was playing piano and was sharp as a tack.
Okay.
Right?
So yeah, you're right. There are
And
exceptions.
so I'm saying, if I can live that life,
Yeah,
I
that'd
feel
be
very
fantastic.
fortunate.
Yeah, no,
But
Right.
then
And
you
by
know-
the way,
I
and
get
by the way, if I get close to that age, I want to make sure that I can support myself.
yeah.
And I don't have to turn to
Good point.
Not be a burden to anybody.
exactly.
No, good
Right?
point.
Exactly.
Good point.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and what we're talking about here is
I
like
got
a
you.
major crisis because what we're talking about is that 95% of people, I would say, they have no allowance for that. And in terms of if they get sick, if they're disabled, they're going to wind up, this is what we're seeing in our healthcare system: an aging population, and people don't have the means, and they rely on a system that's overextended, underfunded, et cetera, and we see all the all the fallout. So we're looking at like a really grim picture for most people. And I don't know as a society, how we're going to get through that.
And here's another indicator, right? So in addition to what you just said, Aki, there are people today, 65, 70 years old, who will tell you, I'm working because I have to, I have no choice.
Yeah.
Why don't you have a choice? I can't retire.
Yeah, I didn't.
I
think
don't have the financial means to retire. Imagine coming to that realization in your 60s or as you approach your 70s.
Well, that's the planning aspect that we talked about, and when you start thinking about these things, and hopefully, if people listen or hear what we're talking about, will, if they're younger anyway, will get their act together and start thinking about, putting aside some money for retirement. Because, yeah, to your point, if I take what you said at face value, which I should, and now that I understand what you meant, I fully agree with you. You should have the capacity or the means, if you're blessed with good health and the ability to enjoy your life post 85, post 90. Well, God bless you. Thank you. Do it, but you have to have the means to do
Yeah,
it.
and I really like the way Aki phrases it. When you say you don't want to be a burden on anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right?
especially
Well, that's
your
the flip
kids.
side of the kids, right?
Back
Exactly.
to the
kids.
kids.
That comes back to the kids discussion and not being a burden.
Yeah, and you know what? I have zero expectation. So, it's interesting from one generation to the next. You talked earlier about things we learn by observing our parents or listening to our parents.
My kids are going to change my diapers.
They won't.
I hope they're not listening.
I don't know your kids, but I'm going to say with a high degree of certainty they won't, because
I agree with
the
Pat.
influences in society today are such that as much as we try to instill certain, values in our kids, and I think, more or less successfully, that the power of social media today is so great.
We're going to have to do a TikTok about changing diapers for elderly people.
And I think something else has changed.
It's
Is
going to
that
go viral, baby.
our generation, maybe I'm wrong about this, but we had the impression like our parents really, they were a generation apart. They were really significantly older than we are. And now, it might not be a bad thing, but the reality is like our kids and us, I don't think there is that distinction. They they see us as being younger, so there isn't, the same kind of, predisposition. They are older people, and we're gonna have to take care of them. They look at us more as, you're young still. Look at us. I mean, we've had our kids at a pretty reasonable age, right? So they still kind of look at us as being almost equals, if you guys know what I'm saying.
There's
So-
a difference between what they say and what they think.
right? But I'm just saying, like
How do we know that?
right.
I had my kids when I was 12, so
I remember. I mean, like grandparents were like my parents, grandparents, and even us right now. With our parents, there is a huge gap in generation,
Yeah.
and we do have to take care of them. And if it comes to changing diapers, maybe we'll have to do that. But with our
60s and you're
kids,
40.
it's not the same perspective at all when they look at us. And good on us, because we take good care of ourselves. We're pretty independent, right?
they're lying to them.
We're good on us. But for that reason, I think, Pat, that's another factor in what you're saying, is how that perception's not there. Our kids just don't see us, to be in that place.
We'll get
Yeah,
there.
it's interesting. I'm not sure I agree with that. I don't think it's so much that they don't see us in that place. I think it's more a question of the role they envision for themselves, the responsibilities that they see for themselves versus the responsibilities we feel we may have vis-a-vis other family members, parents, kids, and so on. And this is where I come back to the influence of social media. And I don't want to put it all on social media. There are other factors. But people are being bombarded, young people of all ages are being bombarded with messages today that are causing a significant shift in viewpoints, right? And part of that is the life you should be leading for yourself. What responsibilities, if any, do you have towards your parents, towards society? You know, you look at what you spend a lifetime doing, not just for your immediate family, but for the community that you're a part of, right?
Yeah,
There are fewer and fewer people.
Oh, values
doing
are,
that.
for sure. Values, I think I would argue that, you know, what you're saying, to your point, I mean, values have been transformed. It's about, you know, self-gratification. It's about visibility.
keep your hands on the table.
It's about visibility. It's more. I think there's through social media. It's certainly a me culture. It's a me world.
And a much, much, much stronger sense of entitlement.
Much greater sense of entitlement.
Yeah, but your kids, our kids, have all been brought up by us, and yeah, there's social media and there's other, you know, factors out there that will be influencing them and everyone else. But at the same time, your core values are your core values,
Yes.
and family is family. So
Yeah.
honestly, I don't know if, you know, getting back to the, you know, the funny aspect of changing diapers or whatever, just taking care of a parent. I don't know if all three of my kids will be up to the task, one or two or none of them will be up to the task, but maybe they will and maybe they won't. And honestly, I don't know, and none of us really know until we get to that point.
So I've had this conversation with my kids.
Yeah,
right?
you
Just
believe that?
half jokingly, not about diapers, but half jokingly. The good news is they learn from our example because we're there for our parents.
Right.
So they see, you know, in the case of my mom, in the case of my mother-in-law, what we had to do for them and how we were there for them, you know, juggling careers and how important that was to us. So I think there's hope in that.
Absolutely, and that's
Yeah, so you know, so I think that's great. I would say that based on what the two of you are saying, I'm going to submit that that's exceptional. I don't think that's representative of society.
Oh, I
at large
agree.
Today.
Oh, I agree, definitely.
And so here's an acid test, right? So if you ask yourself, if your parents had or have a need to be supported but no longer have the means, are you going to reach into your pockets in order to provide them the support they require?
My parents,
Sure.
if they were around, absolutely,
my answer is yes.
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay,
of
so
course.
it's unanimous.
Yeah,
If you ask that question of our kids,
Oh.
what do you think the answer would be?
I think it's going to be yes.
I think so too. I'm pretty confident.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident, yeah. But
You have doubts.
Not so much doubts. I'm leaning much more on the side of, first of all, I don't think they have the resources, right? And I don't
In
think that
20
they're
years-
inclined that way.
In 20 years, they may.
I don't think so. I look at how young people, my children included, live their lives. And for the most part, I'm not saying it's 100%, but for the most part, they live in the here and now.
yeah,
They don't worry about the things that we're talking about. They don't think about, at some point in life, I'm going to have needs, which if I don't plan today, if I don't plan for them today, if I don't execute today, I won't be able to address those needs at a future time.
just like you said, Pat.
I keep hearing problem for future me. Problem for future me, right? I don't want stress. I don't want anxiety. I don't want to have to think about these things.
Pat, you said, you know, putting money aside for rainy days.
Mm-hmm.
They don't think it's never gonna rain.
Right?
The new generation, it's never gonna rain.
No, or they don't want to think about the fact that it may rain someday. And if it does, I'll deal with it then. And as much as you may say, when the rain starts to fall or the thunder showers start, it's too late.
Right.
So so it's up to us to instill that as best we
No,
can.
so I would tell you again.
As best we can.
So, okay, perhaps I failed as a parent. No, all kidding aside, in that I agree with you. And I believe that all those values were instilled in my kids at a young age. And somewhere along the way,
Yeah, some will take and some won't.
there were external influences that caused them to shift their beliefs, shift their values, not 100%, but enough that today I look at how they, and it's their lives, right? They're all adults. They're not children anymore. They're my children, but they're adults.
Yeah.
I have to respect the fact that they're making choices for how they want to live their lives.
Yeah.
Right.
You're right.
It'd be interesting to bring them.
And I don't have to agree with it.
It would be interesting to have them at this table to have this
Maybe,
conversation.
yeah.
That would be very interesting.
We'd have
right?
a hell of a fight on our hands.
But I also want to say, I want to point out that when we talk about resources, it's not just about having, financial means. Of course, we've already laid it out why. Let's be realistic. You need, money and you need financial means. But also, for our kids, even if they don't have, the financial means, it's about also the empathy. It's also about, the sense of family and giving back to you and being loyal to you and being supportive to you in your time of need. I expect that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So again, I
don't know if
I don't know if
but I would hope for it.
yeah, we call it an expectation or
I would.
I don't
I didn't ask for much. We didn't ask much for from them, right? Like I said, I think I can speak safely for all of us. Look at us. We did things right. We took good care of ourselves. We're taking good care of ourselves. We're doing things right. We're independent. We still have a lot of vigor in us. Wonderful.
Yeah, I think, look, and it's just,
But-
we may have philosophical differences. To me, and it was clear from the moment I wanted to have children, it would be all about the children
Right.
until they transition into adulthood.
Right.
I feel that once your kids reach a point in their lives where they transition into adulthood, and not at 18.
No.
I mean, they finish their schooling, they start working, they should be able to support themselves and sustain themselves. I never stop worrying about them, but it's no longer all about them.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And so now it's really a large part of my thinking is towards how do Lisa and I enjoy our lives
That's the balance.
to the fullest.
Exactly.
Right.
So
Right.
to me, what you said is 100% correct. Now, the difference in each one of us is the balance of the two. So how much emphasis do you put on the, Lisa and you having, forward looking for yourselves versus the kids? How much do I put emphasis on me?
But
No, fair enough, but I may not have articulated properly. I was responding more to
Right.
to the comment of having expectation, in the sense that I and Lisa, we are responsible for our well-being. I have zero expectation
Got it.
of my kids doing anything to contribute to my well-being.
So-
if they do, it's their choice.
So
but I have zero expectation.
My argument around the expectation piece is the following, right? So we are, because of all the things that I described, we're not asking for very much. We never asked for anything really from them, and we're not asking anything from them. But I expect, like, if I ever hit a rough patch, that then they would be there for me. So that's my expectation.
Yeah.
Now,
See,
I'm probably too proud. I'm probably too proud. But having said that, I'm probably too proud to actually tell them that I expect it.
No, it doesn't matter.
Right? I don't want to have to ask. You should have the reflex and the instincts.
No, that's a fair comment, but it doesn't matter whether you ask or you don't ask. The point I'm trying to make is the expectation.
Interesting. Yeah.
So in other words, you would be disappointed if they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would be.
I would be pleasantly surprised if they did.
Honestly, I think you'd be a little disappointed if they didn't.
No.
No,
I'm
not-
telling you, no.
That's
I
awesome.
have,
Well, that's awesome.
I have
because-
because
But that's great. I
the
like your
moment
mentality.
I wanted to have children, I wanted to make sure that I was responsible, that I provided for them. I never had any expectation of anyone providing for me or being responsible for me. None.
That's awesome because you're not setting yourself up
Yeah,
for
but-
disappointment.
Yeah, well, even if you don't have expectation, you'll be disappointed.
Why?
It's just the way human nature is.
That's where I was coming from when I said that, right? So if truly you can separate or segment yourself or have that frame of mind, that's fantastic. Because Aki, knock on wood, you'll never be disappointed, and your kids will always.
You guys won't disappoint me. I know that. I mean, if I'm in that situation, there you go. You're going to
here.
step in.
I'll change your
We
diaper.
we have each other.
Romeos are there for Romeos.
We have each other.
We're there. We're gonna hold hands now. Kumbaya.
And actually, for your point that we don't ask anything of our kids, actually, I asked my daughter to replace my screen protector on my iPhone because she does a better job. So
True. Yeah.
So okay, well, I think we got to the bottom of expectations versus pleasant surprise and stuff. And again, I don't expect.
Look,
anything.
fundamentally, we should all be there. Okay, here's the missionary speaking now. We should all be there for each other, right? Starting with our families, what we talked about, and then taking that, as a society, we should be there for each other.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. Comes in
We
different
should.
forms. Comes in different forms.
So what about where should we put our money?
One of the suggestions or recommendations I make to younger people today is better, and again, it depends on the country you live in and the different investment vehicles that are available to you. Unless you work for an employer who is contributing or matching your contributions to a retirement plan, better not to put your money in a retirement plan and defer taxes to a future date. Better to take that money and to put it in a tax-free savings account,
Yeah.
which come in different forms in different countries. Why? Because that money will accrue and you will be able to withdraw it tax-free, even though initially you're being taxed on that money. That money that you're contributing is after-tax dollars. Whereas when you're contributing to a retirement fund, right, it's pre-tax dollars. Why do I say this? Because chances are that over time, tax rates are only going to increase, not decline. And so there's also a likelihood that some people, perhaps not all, but some people will be taxed at a similar or higher rate in their retirement years as in their working years. And so you've completely negated the benefits
Exactly.
of investing in a plan. Now, the one exception I make is if you work for an employer who matches your contributions, jump on it. Why? Anytime somebody offers you free money, grab it.
Exactly.
But TFSAs, I mean, to go to your point, there's caps on how much you can put
Yeah,
in
I mean, yeah,
TFSA.
Maximize.
You should
Yeah.
maximize.
Maximize.
Yeah, but that's not enough
No, it's not.
It's not enough for what?
for accumulating
is.
a retirement
If
fund.
you're
If
20
you
years
start
old.
at an early age,
Oh, I
you're
see,
going to
okay.
accumulate significant
Okay,
wealth
which
Exactly.
yeah,
On a-
TFSAs
on an-
weren't even around when we
on an
started.
entirely tax-free
Right,
basis.
but we lost out on that because we didn't have that
No, we
opportunity.
lost out. We still have an opportunity. We've had many years of
You have
contributions.
95,000
Okay.
you can put in right
But
now.
you can't
I'm
neglect,
taking notes.
can't neglect the RSP either because you're deferring taxes for 20, 30, 40 years.
Well, actually, the deferring taxes isn't the good part. The good part is the growth tax-free. To me, that's the one. So
No, I'm
you-
talking about
No,
the-
it's not tax-free.
well, it's
You're going to be taxed on it.
in the
Exactly.
future. Correct.
No, so you know what?
I agree.
And I've done some financial modeling. You're the expert, but
No.
I allow myself to delve into these
Yeah.
things unless because not everyone, in fact, few people have the means to max out their RSPs.
Exactly.
Yeah, but if you do, then you may as
401k, max out their tax-free contributions.
And still have-
but right?
If you do though, then it's not a bad deal.
I would invest my my money differently in order to make sure that in my later years, I would actually have a much more robust
Cash balance.
financial situation.
But if you have to put it in order, it's company pension plan, pay off your mortgage, TFSA, and your
RSPs
RSPs.
or
Or
401k.
401k.
Yeah, for one.
Yeah, so there's a new vehicle that certain countries are offering, which is it comes under the form of a home savings account, which is also for young people a very attractive vehicle.
We have
So-
that here for first-time home
Well,
buyers.
Canada has it,
Just started.
where you can actually, and so it is. It looks like a RSP 401k at the front end, and looks like a tax-free savings account at the back end. In that, the money you contribute to a home savings account is entirely tax deductible. The money that accrues is entirely tax-free. So when you withdraw the money, so long as you apply it towards the purchase of your first home,
Yeah, it's perfect.
you will have paid zero tax dollars on the amount you initially contributed, as well as the money that will have accrued in that particular account.
And you will have gotten the benefit of the tax savings when you did put the money in.
That's what I'm saying.
So to say.
Yeah.
Tax-free, entirely, through and through. That is the single best vehicle today.
Yeah.
Now, it's capped.
And then don't you have to replace some of that?
No.
It's 40,000. I think it's 8,000 a year for 5 years. If I remember.
In Canada, it's 8,000 a year for 5 years. It differs from country to country where they offer these types of.
But I thought within 2 or 3 years. Well, no. I thought there was a requirement that you replace it.
You have
replenish
not,
it.
no,
There isn't.
There's no replenishment. Once you've used it, it's exhausted. The account is closed.
And you
can
have
only
all the
use
tax
it-
advantages.
You can only use it once
Yeah.
towards the purchase of a first home. That's it.
That's it.
Afterwards, you no longer have the ability to utilize that type of a plan.
And I think first home, if you sell your house like I did, and you wait, I think 3 or 4 years, then you can still use it for your.
But is it well known? I mean, this is it's an interesting instrument, but I'm not sure how well known
Back
it
to
is.
your earlier comment about
Financial literacy.
Financial literacy.
Here we go.
And I think that if people today of all ages simply invested minimal time in informing themselves, and there are resources aplenty
Yeah.
online.
Absolutely.
Inform yourself, educate yourself. Whatever financial institution you deal with has individuals, online resources available to you to help you learn, right? Or reach out to a parent, or reach out to a colleague, or reach out to someone who is knowledgeable in these areas.
Or
and
listen
who's
to a
gonna support
podcast.
Yeah.
it. Or listen to a
But
podcast.
it should be in high school. Sec 4, Sec 5.
Should be mandatory.
Yeah, mandatory. Budgeting.
Oh, that's another podcast. The whole how we're teaching our young people and what kind of courses we're teaching them. I mean, are we teaching young people to really be responsible citizens? We're not.
Guys, topic for another
Topic for
podcast.
another one.
On that note, let's wrap it up. This has been fantastic. I really enjoyed chatting with you guys.
High five,
And
guys, all
Let's
around.
do it again real soon.
That's
Absolutely.
good. Thank you.
Happy retirement.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Bye.